That's right. Please, but do send. We want to hear your questions, not the MPs or even the ministers' ones. Send us your questions, please. Tell us who you are and where you're from, and we'll put your questions to our panel straight after the PM sits down. gbviews@gbnews.com.
PMQs Live is all about you.
That's right. But before we get to the chamber, Andrew Griffith, quickly to you. Last night, were you surprised by Simon Clarke's call for the PM to resign?
Well, look, disappointed that we're even talking about that. You know, we've got a clear plan. That plan is delivering. People are starting to benefit, to Bev's point, from tax cuts in their wages at the end of this month. Inflation is down. That's what we should be talking about. We have a plan. And, of course, Keir Starmer, who Simon also calls out as a danger, doesn't have a plan.
That thought. Prime Minister's questions. We're taking you right now. Right to the House of Commons.
Which is to His Majesty the King and Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House this afternoon, I shall be meeting the extraordinary 100-year-old Holocaust survivor, Lily Everett. Lily promised that if she survived Auschwitz, she would tell the world the truth of what happened. Never has such a promise been so profoundly fulfilled. And as we prepare to mark Holocaust Memorial Day on Saturday, I'm sure the whole House will join me in reaffirming our promise to Lily that we will never forget the Holocaust and we will carry forward her life's work for generations to come.
Richard Thompson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I echo the Prime Minister's comments on World Holocaust Day? My constituents, like all of our constituents, rely on the Royal Mail to deliver important items of mail and packages and for people to run their businesses. So they'll be very alarmed to learn of proposals from Ofcom that Royal Mail might be allowed to cut the number of days that they might be able to, that they will provide that service. Can the Prime Minister give a commitment to me here today that under his watch there will be no reduction in postal services provided by the Royal Mail in Scotland or anywhere else?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I agree about the importance of the Royal Mail's universal service obligation, and as you will have heard from the Minister this morning, we remain absolutely committed to ensuring that it remains as it is.
Paul Holmes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Lib Dem-run council in Eastleigh has just received a report from their external auditors warning of the possibility of fraud and ignoring whistleblowers who try to warn them. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that Lib Dem leaders who shun accountability, shun transparency and simply say "not me, Gov" should start showing some remorse and responsibility or make way for those who will?
Well,
We'll need the answer. Come on, Prime.
My honourable friend raises an important matter to the people of Eastleigh, which I was pleased to discuss with him on my recent visit to his area, and I know that the contents of the report are deeply concerning. It is disappointing to see this Liberal Democrat-run council rack up debt with absolutely no plan for how to fund it. And the council has been issued with a best value notice, and I know that he is talking to the Department of Levelling Up, who will be monitoring the situation closely.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in his comments about His Majesty the King and Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales, and in his comments about Holocaust Memorial Day? Never again must be said more defiantly this year, as it's said every year. Mr. Speaker, last week we lost Sir Tony Lloyd, a true public servant who touched the lives of many people across the House and across the country. And I'm glad that his family were here yesterday to hear the many tributes to and memories of Tony. He will be greatly missed. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister's had quite a week, from endlessly fighting with his own MPs to collapsing in laughter when he was asked by a member of the public about NHS waiting lists. So I was glad to hear that he managed to take some time off.
Can I just say, I wanted to the Prime Minister, I'm certainly going to hear the Leader of the Opposition. Those people who don't want to hear, they can certainly leave, because that's who it's going to be, so get it in order. Some of you are wanting to catch my eye again. It's not a good way to do it.
Mr. Speaker, I love this quaint tradition where the more they slag him off behind his back, the later they cheer in here. Keep it going.
And also, for this side, you can have a joint cup of tea. Come on,
Mr. Speaker, I was glad to see that he managed to get some time off yesterday afternoon to kick back, relax and accidentally record a candid video for Nigel Farage. The only thing missing from that punishing schedule is any sort of governing or leadership. So was he surprised to see one of his own MPs say that he doesn't get what Britain needs and he's not listening to what people want?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, he talks about what Britain needs, what Britain wants, what Britain values. This from a man who takes the knee, Mr. Speaker, who wanted to abolish the monarchy, who still doesn't know what a woman is, and who just this week, one of his front benchers said that they back teaching divisive white privilege in our schools, Mr. Speaker. Looking at his record, it's crystal clear which one of us doesn't get Britain's values.
Mr. Speaker, he spouts so much nonsense, no wonder they're giving up on him. And even now, as his government crumbles around him and his own MPs point out he's out of touch, got no plan for growth, crime or building houses, the Prime Minister is sticking to his one-man Pollyanna show. Everything's fine. People should be grateful to him. The trouble is, no one's buying it. Does he actually understand why his own MPs say he doesn't understand Britain and that he is an obstacle to recovery?
Prime Minister.
Again, Mr. Speaker, he calls it nonsense, but these are his positions, Mr. Speaker. Right? And he doesn't want to talk about it, but this is the fact. He chose to represent a now proscribed terrorist group, Mr. Speaker. He chose to campaign against the deportation of foreign national offenders, Mr. Speaker, just like he chose to serve the Right Honourable Member for Islington North, Mr. Speaker. That's his record, those are his values, and that is exactly how he should be judged.
Mr. Speaker, in 2008, I was the Director of Public Prosecution, putting terrorists and murderers in jail. He was making millions betting on the misery of working people during the financial crisis. And we've seen this story time and time again with this lot. Party first, country second, safely ensconced in Westminster, they get down to the real business of fighting each other to death. The country forced to endure their division and chaos, the longest episode of EastEnders ever put to film. Meanwhile, this week we discover that Britain is going to be the only major economy that no longer makes its own steel. That the government is handing out £500 million to make 3,000 steelworkers redundant. And that the parents of thousands are being told that his free childcare promise is nothing but a mirage. Isn't he embarrassed that the Tory party is yet again entirely focused on itself?
Mr. Speaker, there's yet more sniping from the sidelines. Yeah, you can see exactly why Hizb ut-Tahrir hired him in the first place. But he wants to talk about these things. Even his own party are now realising that he simply doesn't have a plan for this country, Mr. Speaker. The member for Dagenham and Raynham said it's difficult to identify the purpose of his leadership. And long-time celebrity backer Steve Coogan recently said he licks his finger, sticks it in the air, and just sees which way the wind is blowing. Even Labour Party know, Mr. Speaker, he's not a leader, he is a human weather vane.
It's not the sidelines, it's behind him that the fire's coming in, Mr. Speaker. And he can try and blame the Labour Party all he wants. The difference is, I've changed my party, he's bullied by his party. And has he found the time in his busy schedule to work out why thousands of parents are being told by their nurseries that they won't get free childcare that he promised them?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, let's see what his party is offering the country. Right, so we all know, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have many ideas for our country.
I'm going to hear the Prime Minister.
Well, he doesn't have many, but one thing we do know, Mr. Speaker, is that...
You don't want to push it, do you? No.
Do you know that he's committed to his 2030 decarbonisation promise, Mr. Speaker, which they say will cost £28 billion. But I was reading about it this week. He says he's changed the party. One of his team called it an albatross hanging around their neck. That might have been the Shadow Chancellor, maybe, Mr. Speaker. But he said they're doubling down on it. All this ahead of a crunch meeting, we're told this week, for them to work out how they're going to pay for it. I can save them some time because we all know the answer. Higher taxes for the British people.
Mr. Speaker, there's only one party that crashed the economy. They're sitting right there. Right there. And
Oh, Mr. Holmes, you've had your question already. Obviously, you don't want to remain for the rest of it. Keir Starmer.
he is Mr. 25 tax rises. And he's got nothing to say on childcare. Millions of families will have been listening for an answer, and they got absolutely nothing. He announced that scheme a year ago, claiming it would get 60,000 parents back into work. Only on Monday of this week did he notice there was some, in his words, practical issues with that. 8 weeks before its launch, parents can't budget, plan for work, or make arrangements with their employers. And the Prime Minister's response is to say, it's all fine, it's the fault of the Labour Party. Is this merely a practical issue? Or is it yet another example of him simply not understanding how life works for other people?
Mr. Speaker, we're delivering the biggest ever expansion of childcare in this country's history, Mr. Speaker. But while millions of parents will benefit from that, again, it's right that he should come clean with them about the cost that his plans will impose on all of them. He goes on and on about the Green Promise, Mr. Speaker. He says he wants to keep it. He says he wants to keep it, but he doesn't have a plan to pay for it. What he's really saying is he'll scrap the borrowing associated, but he wants to keep the £28 billion of spending. So, for all those working families who are benefiting from our free childcare, he should come clean with them now. Why doesn't he come clean with them now? Come clean with them now and just be clear, his plans mean back to square one and higher taxes for British people.
Mr. Speaker, making steelworkers redundant and failing to provide childcare is not a plan, Prime Minister. It's a farce. It's a farce. And he may soon discover that with childcare, there's an IT problem. Nurseries haven't got the spaces. They haven't got the staff. There's a black hole in their budget, and it's 8 weeks to go. That isn't a plan. And families across the country, well, they can laugh all they like. Families are making plans now. They laugh at it, of course they do. Families are struggling with a cost of living crisis, trying to work out the household budget, balancing spiralling mortgages, prices and eye-watering bills. And then at the last minute, they're thrown into chaos because their nursery says they can't deliver the free childcare he promised. Now, he calls that a practical issue. But I preferred the honesty of whichever of his colleagues briefed to the Times that it was, and I quote, a complete shit show. Who was it who briefed that to the Times? Hands up. Will the Prime Minister finally realise...
I'll decide how long the question goes. Those who wish don't hear it, I've told you the answer, and I'll help you on the way. Keir Starmer.
When will the Prime Minister finally realise that the biggest practical issue facing Britain is the constant farcical incompetence of the government that he leads?
Mr. Speaker, another week with no ideas, absolutely no ideas as country, and absolutely no plan. He talked about the cost of living, Mr. Speaker, he talked about the economy, but he never actually brings it up, and we all know why, Mr. Speaker, because things are improving and we are making progress. Wages now rising, Mr. Speaker, debt on track to be reduced, and inflation more than halved from 11% to 4%, because he actually knows that our plan is working and that his £28 billion tax grab will take Britain back to square one. And that, Mr. Speaker, is the choice. It's back to square one and higher taxes with him, or a plan that's delivering a brighter future with the Conservatives.
Change of gear, Mr. Speaker. Too many oligarchs and kleptocrats are living off ill-gotten gains beyond the reach of domestic courts here or in countries like America. Ever since the 2016 London Anti-Corruption Summit, moves to create an international anti-corruption court have been gathering momentum to plug this gap. It already has support from countries like Canada, Holland and Nigeria, and would fund itself from the fines it charged. Will this government take the lead in getting it underway, ending impunity for these crooks once and for all?
Well, can I firstly pay tribute to my honourable friend for his work on this issue? As I'm sure he'll appreciate, establishing a new bespoke institution is a significant endeavour, but I know he's discussed it with the Foreign Secretary, who will look at the proposals in more detail. And in the meantime, as he knows, our Economic Crime Act has a raft of new measures to crack down on dirty money, and we will shortly be publishing our second anti-corruption strategy. We'll set out ambitious plans for combating corruption, both here at home, but also internationally.
SNP leader Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, last night, as Tory MPs were once again fighting amongst themselves, the public were sat at home watching John Irvine of ITV News report on footage from Gaza of an unarmed Palestinian man walking under a white flag, being shot and killed by the IDF. Prime Minister, such an act constitutes a war crime, does it not?
Mr. Speaker, we've been absolutely consistent that international humanitarian law should be respected and civilians should be protected. I've made that point expressly to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the Foreign Secretary is in the region this week making exactly the same point.
Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, I don't think it's unreasonable to expect the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom to rise to that dispatch box and tell the people of these Isles and elsewhere that shooting an unarmed man walking under a white flag is a war crime. Now, in recent weeks, this House has acted with urgency and intent following an ITV drama. The question is, will this House now show the same urgency and intent following this ITV news report? And finally, back a ceasefire in Gaza.
Mr. Speaker, no one wants to see this conflict go on for a moment longer than necessary, and we do want to see an immediate and sustained humanitarian pause to get more aid in and, crucially, the hostages out, helping create the conditions for a sustainable ceasefire. I set out the conditions for that earlier in the House. The Foreign Secretary is in the region today, and will continue to press all our allies and partners to make sure that we can bring about that outcome.
Tom Hunt.
Speaker, access to NHS dentistry is a key issue in Ipswich and Suffolk. Locally, actually, we've done something about it. The University of Suffolk and the local NHS deserve great credit for establishing a new dental centre which is going to carry 18,000 hours a year of NHS dental appointments. However, a source of great frustration for myself and a number of constituents is that many people who train to be a dentist at university for 5 years and have their training heavily subsidised can immediately go private or actually go abroad without giving anything back to the NHS. It seems wrong to me. Would the Prime Minister support review of many of my constituents for say 5 years they work in the NHS, they give something back, and this will make a huge contribution to this problem?
Prime Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is a long-standing campaigner for better dental access in his constituency, and I congratulate him on the new dental centre that's opening, which I know he worked very hard to deliver. And I agree with him. It's right and fair that we seek better value for the significant investment that the taxpayer makes in the education and training of the dental workforce. That's why, as our workforce plan outlined, we are exploring whether a tie-in would ensure that dentists spend a better proportion of their time in the NHS, and we'll be launching a consultation on this policy later this year.
Colm Eastwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the week of the anniversary of Bloody Sunday, people in Derry are watching unarmed Palestinians being gunned down by Israeli soldiers. Over 25,000 people have now been slaughtered in Gaza. The Prime Minister says, and he said it again today, that he wants to see a sustained ceasefire. So my question is a very, very simple one. The next time there's a vote at the UN for a ceasefire, will his representative vote for it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, of course we'll engage with all UN resolutions on their merits, and I've been clear no one wants to see this conflict go on for a moment longer than is necessary. We do want to see an immediate pause so we can get aid in and hostages out, because the situation is desperate for many people there. But a sustainable, permanent ceasefire needs to fulfill a set of conditions, including Hamas releasing all of the hostages, Hamas no longer being in charge of Gaza with the threat of rocket attacks into Israel, and an agreement in place for the Palestinian Authority to return to Gaza to provide governance and services. The Foreign Secretaries in the region, those are the principles on which we are working, and I believe those are shared by all our major allies.
Sure.
In 1859, Brunel opened his rail bridge over the River Tamar. In 2022, I met with Network Rail and others to celebrate the agreement to build a simple footbridge going over the railway line in Lostwithiel. That bridge still doesn't exist, and I have no completion date. Can my right honourable friend help?
Well, I know that my honourable friend is a long-standing campaigner for the footbridge at Lostwithiel station, and I recognise her concerns and the pressing need for the construction of this footbridge. I'm told that Network Rail is currently working on a funding solution for this, so that it can take forward this important project in the next financial year, and the Rail Minister will keep my honourable friend updated on his progress.
Mr. West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A report released yesterday by the Joseph Rowntree Foundation found that 1 in 4 people in the North East are living in poverty, with the child poverty rate for every local authority in the region higher than the UK average. Too many of our people are being hard hit. Now, the Prime Minister says that his plan is beginning to work. So can I ask the Prime Minister, where does rising child poverty fit in his plan?
Well, in fact, Mr. Speaker, the plan is working because poverty is falling in our country. Since 2010, there are 1.7 million fewer people in poverty, including hundreds of thousands of children. Of course, there's more to do. There's always more to do to make sure children don't grow up in poverty, but that absolutely wouldn't be helped by Labour's £28 billion tax grab on their parents, which would take money out of their families' bank accounts.
James Sunderland.
Mr. Speaker, Bracknell Forest is a place of aspiration, opportunity and enterprise. Business occupancy rates and employment figures are thankfully high. Footfall at the Lexicon Shopping Centre is up and wages are up, but the cost of living continues to bite across the UK. What more can be done to put more money in people's pockets?
Well, it's great to see, thanks to my honourable friend, that Bracknell Forest is thriving, with people in work up, footfall in the town centre up, and as he knows, almost 100% of his schools now good or outstanding. But he's right that we must do more to relieve the burden on working people, Mr. Speaker, which is why we cut taxes for tens of millions of people in work earlier this year, worth on average £450. And we've got to stick to the plan for lower taxes, a strong economy, and a brighter future for the people of Bracknell Forest, and absolutely not risk going back to square one with the Labour Party.
Debbie Abrahams.
Mr. Speaker, if everyone had the same good health as the least deprived 10% of the population, in England there would have been a million fewer deaths between 2012 and 2019, and 28,000 fewer deaths in the first year of COVID. These inequalities are not inevitable. Does the Prime Minister think that cuts in social security to 85,000 low-income households, including people in low-paid work in my constituency, will help or to address these health inequalities?
Well, I can assure the Honourable Lady that we are committed to caring for society's most vulnerable, and that's why almost 20 million families will see their benefit payments increase this April, which will bring our total support over these few years to around £3,700 per UK household. The Department for Work and Pensions is looking very closely at how it can target its services precisely on the most vulnerable customers, and I know the Honourable Lady spoke to the DWP Permanent Secretary at length about this when he appeared before this Select Committee earlier this month, and I can assure her that he will be writing to the committee on exactly this subject shortly.
Jonathan Lord.
The post office scandal has affected so many people, including my constituent, Seema Misra, a sub-postmaster from West Byfleet with an outstanding record of service to her community, who was wrongfully convicted in 2010 of stealing £75,000 and was sentenced to prison on her first son's birthday and whilst pregnant with her second son. Does the Prime Minister agree with me, and more importantly with Seema Misra herself, who is in the gallery today with her husband Devinder, that she is due a full apology from the Post Office, a full apology from Fujitsu, and proper compensation as a matter of urgency?
And I know my honourable friend has been a great support to his constituents over all the years and has fought relentlessly for the truth to come out. As I've said, the Horizon scandal is one of the greatest miscarriages of justice in our nation's history. We will introduce, as I said a few weeks ago, primary legislation within weeks to ensure that all convictions that were based on erroneous Horizon evidence are quashed. That will clear people's names, deliver justice and ensure swifter access to compensation. Innocent people, like my honourable friend's constituents, have waited far too long, and I'm determined that they receive compensation as swiftly as possible. We have a clear moral duty to right these wrongs, and that is exactly what we will do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In 2021, 3,527 food parcels were given out by Bulwell and Bestwood Food Bank. Last year, that number exploded to 6,500, with nearly half going to children. The food bank's now having to buy food to supplement donations, which can only be sustained for a short period. Rather than pretending that things are getting better, will the Prime Minister apologise for the daily chaos in government, which is leaving widespread destitution unaddressed?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to see anyone reliant on food banks, but while they're in place, I have nothing but praise and thanks for the people who run them. But it is wrong to say that we aren't making progress. When I came into this job, inflation was running at 11%. That is the single biggest impact on families' cost of living. And now, thanks to the efforts of this government, most of them opposed by his party, inflation has now been more than halved at 4%. And we're combining that with significant tax cuts to put more money in people's bank accounts at the end of every month. That's the right way to go about supporting people, combined with our extensive cost of living support for the most vulnerable. And all the statistics show that that support has helped, has made a difference, and that's what you get with responsible management of the British economy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In November, I held an adjournment debate on the South Fylde line and the need for a passing loop to double its hourly service and increase resilience against delays and cancellations, which again cause misery for travellers over Christmas. The assurances I received from the Rail Minister built on the positivity generated by the reallocation of HS2 funds. Since then, progress has been desperately slow, and my efforts to advance this critical piece of infrastructure for the people of Fylde has been frustrated. Will the Prime Minister meet with me to discuss how the government can help to get the South Fylde line back on track?
Prime Minister. My honourable friend is correct that local transport projects are and must be prioritised, and every region of our country will have more transport investment as a result of the decision that we made on HS2. Now, work is underway to consider potential upgrades to the West Coast Main Line, including improvements at Preston Station, which may support additional local services from South Fylde. I know the Rail Minister is carefully considering these options as we speak, and will update my honourable friend in due course.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thames Water are a shambles. In the recent flooding in Oxfordshire, they were dumping sewage from 270 sites along the Thames in 1 week. There was waste backing up into people's homes because of drains that they had not unblocked, and they couldn't even refill their own reservoir because the rivers were too dirty. But rather than offer a rebate for this shoddy service, they are intending to put bills up for everyone by 60%. So will the Prime Minister explain to my constituents why they are being asked to foot the bill for Thames Water's gross incompetence?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we've been clear that the volume of sewage discharged by water companies is unacceptable, and that's why we've launched the most ambitious storm overflow discharge reduction plan. And we have now achieved monitoring of almost every single storm overflow in England under this and previous governments, and have introduced unlimited penalties on water companies. And where there is evidence of poor performance, the Environment Agency will not hesitate to pursue water companies concerned, just as they did, I believe, a couple of years ago in the Honourable Lady's constituency, where they fined Thames Water specifically £4 million following a serious incident.
Theresa May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the Honourable Member for Knowsley and I published our report on TIDE, Type 1 diabetes and disordered eating. a condition estimated to affect over a quarter of type 1 diabetics in the UK. It is life-shortening, life-threatening, and can lead to death. I'm pleased to say that Hampshire Integrated Care Board have already responded positively to the report. Will my right honourable friend ensure that the government not only looks seriously at the recommendations we have put forward, but acts on those recommendations, which would improve lives, and save money for the NHS?
Can I start by thanking my right honourable friend and indeed the right honourable member for Knowsley for their important work on this issue. Of course, I know both of them speak from personal experience, and as she says, it is important that people get the treatment they need. The Health Secretary will of course consider the report, and the NHS has already been piloting services to support those with this condition, as she's aware of, and I understand that the NHS is also now expanding pilot sites to every region of the country so that even more people can benefit from the appropriate integrated care.
Adam Kaiser.
Mr Speaker, we entered 2024 with starvation and famine as acute as ever across the globe, much of it caused by the climate crisis. Yet at present, the world's worst hunger crisis is in Gaza, created by Israel's ongoing siege. The Integrated Food Security Phase classification has found that of 600,000 people facing starvation globally, 95% of them are in Gaza. Mr Speaker, starvation used as a weapon of war is a war crime. The Israeli government has the power to end this starvation crisis by ending the siege of Gaza and opening all crossings. Does it not, Prime Minister?
Mr Speaker, I've been absolutely clear that we are incredibly concerned about the devastating impact of the situation in Gaza on citizens. That's why we have tripled our humanitarian aid for this financial year to the region, and, as I said in the statement yesterday, are working with partners such as Jordan and the United States to open up new aid corridors so we can increase the supply of aid getting in to those who desperately need it.
Miriam Cates.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. This morning, the press reported the tragic case of a 14-year-old girl who took her own life following horrific social media bullying, including on TikTok and Snapchat. Since 2010, across the English-speaking world, there's been a marked increase in poor teen mental health, teen suicide attempts, and children addicted to pornography. The United Kingdom has a strong tradition of legislating to protect children from serious threats to their safety and welfare. So does my right honourable friend agree with me that it's time to consider banning social media and perhaps even smartphones for under 16s?
Well, Mr Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight the impact of what happens online on our children, and that's why our Online Safety Act tackles both criminal activity online and protects children from harmful or inappropriate content such as bullying or the promotion of self-harm, accessing pornography, and also exposure to eating disorders. Ofcom are now rightly developing and consulting on the guidance and the codes of practices for how those platforms will meet their duties, and if they don't clean up their act, then Ofcom will be able to impose fines of up to 10% of global turnover on the social media firms.
Mr Speaker, recently released documents reveal that the Foreign Office had serious concerns about Israel's compliance with international humanitarian law and its ongoing assault on Gaza. This assessment was hidden from Parliament, whilst the Prime Minister boldly stated his confidence in Israel's respect for international law. Since then, the scale of Israel's war crimes in Gaza have been revealed to the world thanks to South Africa's case to the ICJ. Therefore, is it now not the time for the Prime Minister to admit that he has the blood of thousands of innocent people on his hands, and for him to commit to demanding an immediate ceasefire and an ending of UK's arms trade with Israel?
Mr Speaker, that's the face of the changed Labour Party.
Educational Trust exhibition in Portcullis House and for your personal unwavering commitment to Holocaust remembrance.
Mr. Speaker, as we approach Holocaust Memorial Day, will the Prime Minister join me in commending the important work of the Holocaust Educational Trust, in particular their work with Holocaust survivors, who, despite living through the darkest moment in human history, continue to share their testimony in the hope of ensuring never again. In the face of the appalling rise in anti-Semitism which we see on the streets of Britain, will my right honourable friend join me in encouraging all members to sign the Book of Commitment and stand up against anti-Semitism?
Mr. Speaker, I join my honourable friend in paying tribute to the brilliant work of the Holocaust Educational Trust and thank her for all her work on this issue. I'll be signing the Book of Commitment this afternoon during my meeting with Lily Ebbett, and I encourage members on all sides to do the same and to reaffirm with shared determination to ensure that the Holocaust is never forgotten and to defeat the resurgence of anti-Semitism and all forms of hatred in our country.
Final question, Sarah Champion.
Mr. Speaker, I represent a proud steel community in Rotherham who stand with the steel workers in Port Talbot at this very worrying time. My constituents don't want to see their taxpayers' money used to make British workers redundant, our primary steel-making capacity decimated and our national security compromised. So will the Prime Minister change his destructive course, starting by looking at the credible multi-union plan to safeguard our steel industry's long-term future?
Mr. Speaker, I know this is an anxious time for steel workers in South Wales, but we are committed to working with the steel sector to secure a positive and sustainable future. The Honourable Lady will know that during the pandemic we provided support to Celsa, a steel company in South Wales, to safeguard jobs and ensure the sustainability of that plant. And what was proposed to happen in South Wales was the loss of 8,000 direct jobs, thousands more across the supply chain, and the complete closure of the plant. Because of the government's investment and support and partnership with Tata, we have safeguarded 5,000 direct jobs, thousands more in the supply chain, and ensured the long-term sustainability of that steel plant so it has a brighter future. Obviously, this is difficult, but it's entirely churlish of her not to recognise the largest support package. It is one of the largest support packages that any government has provided any company, and in the process safeguarded thousands of jobs.
That completes Prime Minister's questions.
Welcome back to PMQs Live with me, Gloria De Piero, and Christopher Hope.
That's right. We're still joined in the studio here by Science Minister Andrew Griffiths and Shadow Paymaster General Jonathan Ashworth.
So you have been sending us your questions as you've been watching PMQs with us, and there are some crackers that have come in.
Not that word. Cracker. What's crackers?
Crackers. Yes. Jonathan Ashworth, you are in the shadow cabinet. You would hope to be in the cabinet if there is a Labour government. There's a few questions that have come in from our viewers on the same theme. So I'm going to start from Lee from Wirral. Why has he just spent 10 minutes in PMQs having a slagging off competition with the Leader of the Opposition when neither have discussed anything which benefits the country and people of the UK? Does this paint politics and politicians in a good light?
I mean, I totally get why Lee on the Wirral watches politicians arguing amongst themselves every week here, when there'll be so many things impacting Lee's life, I suspect. I suspect Lee is probably worrying about the increase in the mortgage because of the Tories wrecking the economy. His families across the Wirral and elsewhere are worrying about the fact that they're paying around £1,200 more on average in tax. If Lee goes to Asda's or Tesco's later today, he'll see that the prices have gone up in the shops and they've been locked in. And of course, whether it's the NHS or whether it's dealing with our borders or schools, where people like Lee are paying a fortune and nothing works. So I totally get why Lee is despondent. Labour's got a plan to fix this, and after 14 years of the Tories, we need to change this country and fix these problems with Labour's plan.
Andrew Griffith. I'm going to bring in Carl from Bradford, who says he went to school with me. Hello, Carl. It's nice of you to get in touch. I'm from Bradford and a former school friend of Gloria. Does anything ever get done in PMQs, or is it just a chance of trying to get one over on the other?
Well, I'm not going to fall into exactly the same trap that John has just done. Just like Keir Starmer, week after week, all they ever do is criticise. There is no plan. Why would you, if you're leader of the opposition, not use that time to set out what you're going to do about stopping the votes, what you're going to do to reduce crime, even applaud the government for taking tough decisions on the economy that's meaning people's taxes are being cut? But we did learn one thing, and the thing we learned actually was number one in my inbox this morning, which is people are really worried about Royal Mail, and they're worried about potentially losing that lifeline, which is the regular delivery. And right out the box, the Prime Minister said that he confirmed that this government is actively committed to maintaining the daily delivery as we've got now.
Well, Jonathan, Alison's emailed in saying she wants to know if the Labour Party are doing what their constituents want in relation to the Rwanda bill, or are they going against the voters, which is by opposing the government?
No, not at all, because, look, I know people across the country are absolutely furious that the government have lost control of our borders. It's actually these criminal gangs that control our borders. I totally get why people are so angry, particularly when they're paying £1,200 more on average in tax, and they're worried about their mortgage because it's gone through the roof because of the mess of the economy that the Tories have bequeathed us. Look, what we've said is we need a really serious plan. They spent £400 million on this so far. They've not even sent one asylum seeker. The last Labour government actually deported more illegal migrants than this government has. I mean, Patrick O'Flynn, very respected ex-UKIP MEP, was making that point just a few days ago. Look, what we would do is we would invest in a proper cross-border police force to go after these people smugglers, smash these gangs using terrorist-style laws, go after them, and actually would clear the backlog. And if people from Albania or India or wherever it is aren't supposed to be here, we'd send them back. That's what the Tories should be doing, but they're failing.
Andrew?
Well, as John knows, his party has opposed every single one of the tougher laws, the criminal sanctions that we've put on people smugglers. We have to break the economic model. Rwanda is a core part of that, because if people feel that they're going around hawking the idea in Calais of taking these dangerous, unsafe crossings that lead tragically to deaths in the Channel, we have to break that model, and the Rwanda scheme does that. And we have not heard, we're still not hearing from John this morning, another plan.
Just giving you an alternative.
Well, you voted against the laws. You said toughen up the laws, and your party...
Half of your crowd don't even think these laws are going to work.
You had
this fella, you had your ex-Darknessy chair resigning, then he was going to vote against it, but because Labour MPs giggled at him, I mean, they're laughing at him now, he then walked out, and now he's back on the news today saying his mistake. Your party is divided from top to bottom on this.
The best way in which to toughen up those laws. On the other side, all we heard was opposition to the whole idea in the first place. They've got no plan. Once again,
just giving you a plan. You weren't listening.
OK, another theme that has been quite dominant is people who have voted for the Conservative Party in the past, concerned about the direction that is going in. David got in touch. By the way, do tell us where you're from when you email in, because we like to know who we're chatting to and where they are in the country. David got in touch referring to the infighting in the Conservative Party. He says there's only one way they might possibly save their skins, and that is to make Suella Braverman their leader.
Look,
yes or no?
the way that a party, any party, delivers faith with the electorate is to get on and deliver. Now, the good news is we have a plan. We've had to make tough decisions. I understand why people feel that it's been a difficult few years, but we're coming out. We have a plan. People are starting to see the benefits in terms of things like tax cuts, reducing interest rates on their mortgages. We've got to stick with that plan. And what we don't see from the opposition, wherever you look, whether it's getting down on crime or the record amount of putting into childcare, is them coming forward with a plan. Very good at criticising, constant carping, sniping from the sidelines, but not an actual comprehensive set of plans. And the one plan that we know, and I'll finish on this point, but the one plan we do know is £28 billion of extra spending every year without a plan to fund that.
I will come to our Labour spokesperson in a second on that. But first,
how that will be funded.
Well, just while on you, Andrew, Penny has emailed in saying the Tory party are all guilty. They've broken Britain with broken promises. Why trust them again? She's voting for reform. What's your message of reform?
Well, there's only two people that are going to be Prime Minister after the next general election. That's a long way to run, but we've got...
I don't think Penny likes either of those options. That's her point.
well, Penny needs to work out, which option is it that's going to back our police, that's going to continue to deliver a strong economy, that's going to put more money in her pocket because we're going to reduce taxes after a period in which we've had to take difficult decisions. And a vote for any party other than the Conservative Party, I would say, is not going to deliver that.
OK. Wonder what
Sorry,
Penny had to...
Sorry, Penny. That's, some hard
to
truths,
say about that.
but...
She can let us know. Steve. My another plea. Please do let us know where you're from when you email him. But Steve says, I would like to ask Jonathan Ashworth, how is Labour going to make sure they provide the energy that we need? And I think we might cover Andrew's point about the £28 billion that we seem to be doing a little bit of a hokey-cokey on. Is it, are you borrowing £28 billion a year or not to help supply Britain's energy?
Well, we believe there is potential for lots of really good, well-paid quality jobs across the country, which will power up this country in a way in which the government have failed to do that. We will also bring down energy bills by investing in onshore wind. The government won't allow onshore wind. We should be using onshore wind. We should be making better use of solar. We should be making better use of tidal. One of the problems why we're not doing it at the moment is because there are problems with the way in which something called the national grid works, and we need to fix those problems. We're going to create a publicly owned company, GB Energy, to really drive the investment that we need in our national grid, drive investment in onshore wind and the whole renewable sector, which we know, as I say, can bring good quality jobs to this country and bring down energy bills. So that is an example of long-term planning. That is an example of how the Labour Party does have a plan. I mean, they talk about having a plan. Their plan's given families higher mortgages and higher tax bills. That's basically their plan. We want to bring down energy bills and create good, well-paid jobs across the country.
Do you agree with that, Andrew, or do you think that the way that Jonathan's describing this money being spent on the Green Plan is more debts and more taxes? I mean, but that's what...
Well, the Labour Party have singularly failed to say how they're going to fund for that. They're actually, it's their one policy, and they themselves are at sixes and sevens, whether it's we're going to borrow today or we're going to tax tomorrow. But there is a recklessness in the Labour Party's approach to energy. We all understand how important energy is. It's important to the cost of living. It's the biggest single thing that's pushed up households' challenges on the cost of living. And the idea that you would simply pluck 2030 out of thin air, you know, a handful of years away now, and say that we're going to decarbonise our economy and turn off oil and gas by 2030, will expose real jeopardy to British people. So you've got two things. You've got the 28 billion that they won't say how they're going to fund. They don't have a plan. But you've also got this general sense of we're just going to barrel ahead. We all want to decarbonise our economy. The UK has done a fantastic job in offshore wind farms with the first, second, third, fourth and fifth largest offshore wind farms in the world. We've got a really proud record. But what we're not going to do is have this sort of ideological tear to 2030 that's going to expose people, particularly in rural communities like mine, but people whose homes perhaps don't have the very highest quality insulation. They're going to be the ones paying the price for Labour's reckless approach to energy.
But you just contradicted yourself, because on the one hand you say we all want to do decarbonisation, and then on the second hand you say there's great jeopardy. So when do you want to do it by?
I'll let you finish. But not by 2030.
When do you want to do it by?
I mean, this is a big long-term plan. The government's got a long-term plan to do that.
But what's your target?
But what we're not going to do is just throw out there the idea that we're going to take the whole economy by 2030, damaging our industry, pushing up individuals' households' bills, actually adding to the carbon bill because you're going to be bringing in things like oil and gas from overseas, damaging our security as a country, and ultimately heaping the cost on ordinary working folk.
But you do want to decarbonise, but not have a target.
Well, we have a legal as a country. We have a legal obligation.
So why is it jeopardy
both our parties supported that by 2050, John. And it's all about getting the right pace.
You're trying to have your cake and eat it. I mean, you're trying to say on the one hand you want to decarbonise, but on the other hand you're criticising others who want to decarbonise.
I think it's struggling to understand the basic maths.
It's no wonder you've pushed the economy off a cliff and everyone's paying more on their mortgages. This is the glide path
of a glide path that's still up with the very best of the G7 to 2050, John, versus a reckless tear to achieve that by 2030, which is your party's policy. And I think viewers can understand the difference between doing something in a measured way and doing something for ideological reasons.
OK, there's loads of questions in here from disgruntled Conservative voters who are not too keen on Rishi Sunak. I'm not going to give you a free hit on that, Labour's Jonathan Ashworth, but I'm going to see if I can get a straight answer here.
You always get a straight answer from me.
Say the Conservative Party did depose Rishi Sunak and replace him with somebody who had more of better poll ratings with the voters.
Like Andrew.
That would... but my point to you, Jonathan Ashworth, is that all the polling suggests that your lead, which is substantial, but it is soft. And if the Tories, they may or they may not, I have no crystal ball, if they get rid of Rishi Sunak and replace him with somebody who polls better, then you could be in trouble.
Well, first of all, and you'd expect me to say this as a politician, but it's absolutely true, you don't believe opinion polls, right? The only poll that matters is the election day, and in the end, it's up to the viewers of GB News, the British people, to decide who they want their government to be, and no politician should take anything for granted or say something's in the bag or something terrible is going to happen. Not at all. You know, we are working very hard to win the trust of the British people in that general election campaign. But look, in the end, right, you know, we've had different questions from Rwanda to energy bills and so on. That shows you what people want to focus on. But instead, we've got this kind of circular firing squad in the Tory party, more preoccupied with infighting and division when people are paying more on their mortgage, more in tax, more in the shops. They can't get an appointment in the NHS. There's chaos at the borders. And actually, this is why this country cannot turn the corner that it needs to do after 14 years. So we do need change in this country, and Labour has a plan to rebuild the NHS and raise living standards and grow our economy.
Well, Andrew, before you come back at that, Patricia from Sheffield has said to us she's a long-standing Tory voter, but she won't be voting for your party at the election on the basis that what they're judging you on what you've delivered, what you promised to deliver, and the Tory party is reluctant to fully deliver Brexit. Give her one reason why should you vote Tory, and look down the camera there and talk to her at home.
This is a government that is not afraid to take tough choices. And we live in a volatile, difficult geopolitical situation. You can see that our British armed forces, as well as supporting vicariously the very difficult situation in Ukraine, are actively trying to bring peace to the Middle East and the Red Sea at the moment. In these difficult times, it is the Conservative Party that's going to cut your taxes, that's going to focus on getting good value for money for every pound that government spends. Those are our core beliefs. It's been a difficult few years. There's no doubt about that. Your viewers completely understand that. But it is this government that is coming forward. Got a plan. We're sticking to that plan. What do we know about Keir Starmer? We know he wants to take the knee. We know he wanted to put Jeremy Corbyn into power, someone whose values, I think, are not similar to the values of your viewers. They're not my values, and that's very important at the election when you look at a choice.
Joan from Devon. And this is a similar point. We've got disgruntled Tories. If I could pick out two sort of recurring themes. Disgruntled Tory voters and also people who are generally fed up with politics and politicians. Joan from Devon, please ask them why politicians never give a straight answer and just use the media as a platform for their own ideas. Honesty has gone. We make no judgment on you two, but is there a way we can do political communication better without the, you know, he said that, she promised that, Punch and Judy?
But you characterise it as Punch and Judy, but it is right in a democratic system that there is a clash of ideas, that the viewers at home and the people going to an election can see that there is a big choice in an election campaign. And when that general election day comes, that their vote is so powerful that they get to decide between whether they want 5 more years of the Conservatives after the 14 years and get to ask themselves how they would feel if they woke up in the morning and the Tories have won that election and got 5 more years, or whether they want to vote for change, whether after 14 years they want a different approach. And I think it's right that politicians have these debates, have these arguments, and that these different ideas are exposed. It's not Punch and Judy, it's because we've got different views of the world, and in a democratic system, it's right that those different views are aired.
Andrew?
Well, I agree with John on that. And let's give your viewers a straight answer to a straight question. We have had to put up taxes because of the cost of COVID and because of the desire to protect every household during the difficult energy crisis that we have had. We are now reducing those taxes because Conservatives believe that you should keep more of you earn. We have started that in the last 2 budgets, and my hope and expectation is that because of the fact the economy is now in better shape, we will be able to continue that journey. That is a clear clear difference. There's a clear difference of philosophy. There's a clear track record of delivery in terms of what we're doing. Straight answer, straight question, that is what we're doing.
Straight answer, straight question to finish on, yes or no. Do you prefer it when we put viewers and listeners' questions in this format rather than me and Chris being clever so-and-sos? Yes or no?
Yes, I much prefer it.
What do you think of our new format?
Well, I don't think we would be members of Parliament if we weren't comfortable exposing ourselves to what ordinary folks say.
We love it so much. That's what we love about this show, bringing your voice to our politicians.
The Science Minister Andrew Griffiths and Shadow Postmaster General Jonathan Ashworth, thank you so much for joining us on GB News.
Yes, you've been watching and listening to PMQs Live with Laura Di Piero and Chris Hope. Don't go anywhere, because up next, it's Good Afternoon Britain with Ben and Emily.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office with the GB News forecast. Dry for many of us today, sunniest in the south, a lot of cloud elsewhere, and it will continue to feel cold, especially in the south where we've got this easterly wind and cold air imported from the continent. Further north, lighter winds with high pressure nearby, but a lot of cloud coming into northern and eastern Scotland, southern Scotland as well, northern and eastern England. And here there will be some showers, rain at lower levels, some snow over the hills, but mostly these showers are light, 1 or 2 showers for Wales as well. But otherwise, western Scotland, southern and southeast England seeing the best of any sunshine, and wherever you are, it will feel cold, 5, 6 Celsius at best. Some places staying at 1 to 3 Celsius with that biting in wind from the east affecting southern areas. And we'll continue to see that overnight. Clear skies in the south leading to a widespread frost once again, temperatures dipping to -1 or -2 Celsius fairly widely. Western Scotland also seeing a touch of frost because of clear skies here, but elsewhere where we've got the cloud, well, it's going to stay frost-free across parts of East Wales into northern and eastern England, eastern Scotland as well. Fewer showers around on Thursday. In fact, after 1 or 2 showers first thing, it mostly becomes dry by the afternoon. Increasing amounts of sunshine across much of Scotland, less sunshine further south and southeast, with cloud increasing through the day.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 1 o'clock on Wednesday, the 24th of January.
Commotion in the Commons. The Prime Minister comes out fighting after dramatic calls from his own benches to resign last night. Rishi Sunak accused Sir Keir Starmer of being a human weather vane, while the Labour leader mocked the PM for being, quote, bullied by his party. But did either of them actually land a punch?
For King and Country, the head of the army warns Brits will be called up to fight if the UK goes to war with Russia because the military is simply too small. Would you support conscription?
And insensitive Sussexes, as the King and Princess of Wales endure medical procedures back home, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were photographed posing with the Jamaican Prime Minister on the red carpet last night, a man who wants to cut ties with the British monarchy. What exactly is their game plan?
And the Trump train steams on. Donald Trump moves one step closer to the White House after storming to victory in the New Hampshire primary last night. Joe Biden says it's now clear the Donald will be the Republican nominee. But Trump's party rival Nikki Haley says the campaign is far from over.
Good afternoon, Britain.
It was a bit of a febrile atmosphere
Yes.
in the House of Commons, wasn't it, for that PMQs?
A ding-dong, you might